Nyalche Chenpo Soto Nyingmi Shang, Longnen Manam Chenpo, Nyalche Da, Lankara Dargang Santo, Sherma, Tumba Tukje Chan La Ki Shiom Sar, Nishan Rawar Zer Nishan Kamsa, Jawar Tukji Shan Yelaman, Jime Panzo Jala, Soran, Gongju Toban Pora Shinji Lo, Gongju Toban Pora Shinji Lo, Gongju Toban Pora Shinji Lo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching.
Now, let's continue with our teaching. In the Shurangama Sutra, we previously discussed the 5 great elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and space. Then, building upon this, today we come to the primary element of awareness. Yesterday we also covered the primary element of space. So what can we teach next? The primary element of awareness. Today we're teaching about the primary element of awareness. And afterward we'll discuss the primary element of consciousness. Now this primary element of awareness is actually what we previously discussed as the essence of seeing, the nature of seeing. This seeing is quite similar. For example, in texts like the Jangmai commentary on the Shurangama Sutra, some say that the primary element of awareness is the primary element of the sense faculties. To call it the primary element of the faculties is also correct, but actually this primary element of awareness here includes our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. It should encompass all 5 sense consciousnesses. They apprehend external objects, and in the process of apprehending external objects, they can see the object. When seeing this object, it all occurs within the matrix of the Thus Come One. It is unshakable and also vast and boundless. This principle can be called the primary element of awareness, because the primary element of consciousness that follows is mainly discussed from the level of consciousness. Of course, its method of analysis primarily involves the objects of light, darkness, and space. There may be many similarities, but what we call seeing here is not merely what the eyes see. Actually, in Buddhist logic, there are the 5 sense consciousnesses, the 6 consciousnesses, or the 5 sense consciousnesses. The 5 sense consciousnesses are a kind of non-conceptual direct perception. Actually, the seeing here also has this meaning. In the narrow sense, seeing means seeing with the eyes, visual perception. But in the broad sense, all the objects obtained through the 5 faculties can all be called seeing. Because when a first-ground bodhisattva attains the path of seeing, it's actually not just what the eyes see. They have already realized, and within their realized state, the true nature of forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations can all be spoken of. So this seeing here should be understood as somewhat different from our ordinary visual seeing. So the Buddha told Ananda, visual awareness has no knowledge, it exists because of form and space. What this means is the Buddha, because for each primary element there is first a brief summary statement. So this so-called visual awareness, this awareness that allows us to see objects, is actually without inherent knowledge. It's a discriminating knowledge that has no inherent essence. It is without knowledge. Why? Because it exists due to form and space. Because the objects of form and space differ. Our seeing, hearing, and knowing can arise. So it doesn't have its own essence that is always permanently unchanging, or that is always fixed and eternally existent. It won't be like that. So how do we know this? Now we'll begin to explain. The Buddha told Venerable Ananda, saying it is like this. As you are now in Jeta's grove, it is bright in the morning and dim in the evening. If you dwell there at midnight, when there is a bright moon, there is light. When there is a dark moon, it is dark. Here it says, now you are in Jeta Grove Monastery, and there during the day you see brightness, and at night you see dimness. When living in such a dwelling, actually, we should say during the daytime, in fact, whether at night or during the day, when dwelling in this way, there is the light of the bright moon, and then why is there darkness? The darkness, actually, it's when there is a dark moon, it is dark. Dark moon means at night when there is no moonlight, no sunlight. at that time it becomes dark. So first he explains that when you, Venerable Ananda, are at Jeta Grove Monastery, actually the brightness you see during the day and the darkness at night are different. Then light, darkness, and so forth are distinguished through seeing. So this light and darkness, how are these distinguished? Of course they are analyzed through our seeing. Of course here it seems visual seeing is primary when it's bright, because we see the forms outside. At that time we analyze it as, oh, today is daytime, or we see things under moonlight. And then if it's dark, because you don't see anything, it's dark, pitch black. In that case, because we haven't seen anything, so today is pitch dark. So the reason for your light and darkness is also analyzed through seeing. Now we'll begin the detailed analysis. Is this seeing identical to the characteristics of light and darkness, together with space, the characteristics of light and darkness and space? Here it asks, is this seeing connected with light and darkness, or is it connected with space? Space here means with that space, because it's objects. The objects of our seeing are light and darkness, and also space. These three, are they one essence or not one essence, or are they the same yet not the same, or different yet not different? Here it analyzes from four perspectives. Compared to the previous reasoning methods, it's slightly different. The Buddha told Ananda, what you call seeing now, the objects are either light or darkness or space. Besides these three, there's basically nothing else. When analyzing here, it seems visual seeing is used as the main example, the object of the eye. Originally we talked about forms, but here regarding forms, throughout the previous reasoning it's been like this: light, darkness, and space, these three. So in this way, your essence of seeing, your seeing, is it one essence with these three objects or not one essence? One essence is one question. Then not one essence. Not one essence means separate essence. This is the second question. Then same, not same. Is your seeing the same as it or not the same? Everyone knows this. Same and not same. Actually, that is being the same with it, not the same with it. It has a characteristic of similarity and dissimilarity. Previously speaking in terms of its essential nature, is it merged into one essence like one's own body, or like a pillar and a vase? Is it a separate essence, or different yet not different? Here, different essence and not different compared to the earlier same essence and not same has some similarity with what follows. Generally, one essence and different essence also have this meaning, but when he analyzes below, it may also have some connection with same, because when analyzing below, same and different are analyzed together, and then not same and not different are analyzed together. There's a bit of connection with that, so it's divided in this way. Analyzing four aspects: one essence and different essence, one essence and separate essence, then same and not same. This should be four. Then one and different should be six, analyzing from six perspectives. First, the Buddha told Ananda, if this seeing together with light and darkness and together with space were originally one essence, if you acknowledge that this essence of seeing, that essence of seeing just now, together with light, darkness, and also space, if these three were originally all one essence, generally we ourselves should think about this. For example, if I see with my eyes, then the objects my eyes perceive are light or darkness, or the space in between that is neither light nor darkness. This space in between, would these three merge into one essence? Generally speaking, we probably wouldn't acknowledge this, because my seeing is the perceiver, and as for the objects, these three, whether being one essence with light, one essence with darkness, or one essence with space, it seems this doesn't make sense. Generally speaking, we probably wouldn't acknowledge this. But if someone says, you think our essence of seeing and these three objects, if they merged into one essence, then what fault would there be? Then light and darkness, these two essences, would mutually perish. Because if we, together with space and seeing, plus light and darkness, all of them, there are four in total. If these four phenomena merged into one essence, then what fault would there be? Then these two essential natures of light and darkness would certainly cease to exist, these two essential characteristics. Here the reason is not stated, but I think, because they're one essence with space and the essence of seeing. If space and the essence of seeing are one essence, if light and darkness are one essence with space, space is something that doesn't exist, so light and darkness should also not exist. Why? Because they're also one essence with space, and space doesn't exist. I haven't had time to look at other commentaries, but I don't know if this is how they analyze it. Anyway, there are many explanations of the Shurangama Sutra. I feel the ancient explanations are still relatively profound, but you can also look at them yourselves and analyze for yourself what this is like, why there is this fault. This is one fault. And also, when it is dark, there is no light. When it is light, there is no darkness. Because if they merged into one essence, when it is dark, when darkness appears, there should not be light. Because if my essence of seeing merged into one essence with darkness, at that time there should not be light. What is the reason? Because seeing and darkness are one essence. If darkness and seeing are one essence, then the opportunity to see light would never exist, because light and the current darkness and seeing have all merged into one essence. By the same reasoning, conversely, if our essence of seeing appears with light at the time of brightness, then darkness should not exist. What is the reason? Because my seeing is one essence with darkness. If seeing and darkness are one essence, then what I see is darkness. If I see darkness, then light can never exist. The reason it cannot exist is what? Because my seeing is one essence with darkness, and light also cannot exist. Because something of a separate essence cannot exist within this. Moreover, you yourself have already acknowledged that light, darkness, space, and seeing, these four phenomena merge into one essence. If it were one with darkness, then when there is light, seeing would be lost. If we acknowledge that the essence of seeing is completely one essence with darkness, this is somewhat similar to the previous method of analysis. If our essence of seeing merges into one essence with the object of darkness, then what other fault would there be? Then the so-called light, the so-called brightness, when there is light, seeing would be lost. This means the perceiver that sees light would completely perish and be impossible. If it must be one with light, then when it is dark, it should perish. Then what must it be? Because this, didn't I just say I was one essence with darkness? In that case, it must be that light, when it is dark, will certainly perish. So what is this perishing? If it perishes, then how? If you acknowledge that at that time it has already perished, how could there still be seeing light and seeing darkness? It certainly cannot exist. If light has already perished, seeing darkness is also impossible. If darkness has already perished, this situation of seeing light also cannot exist. This absolutely cannot exist. We should all understand this, because regarding the objects, darkness and light are completely contradictory separate essences. If these two were one essence, then when only one appears, the other cannot possibly exist. Of course, here space is not much analyzed. Actually, if we analyze space, space is easy to discuss. It's originally something that doesn't exist. If it's originally something that doesn't exist, to say it exists is merely conventional designation. If it doesn't exist, that's just the nature of space itself. So here, space is not brought in for analysis. If light and darkness are distinct, seeing has no birth or cessation. If we consider light and darkness to be, if light and darkness are separate essences, we all know light and darkness are spoken of from the perspective of objects. In that case, if these two are separated, are separate essences, then in that case, seeing should have no birth or cessation. Looking at this, it seems I've now forgotten how to explain this. If light and darkness, I see the Tibetan and Chinese seem slightly different, but the Tibetan is somewhat easier to understand, because here it acknowledges they are one essence. Right, it should be like this. If light and darkness are separated, then in that case, seeing has no birth or cessation, because if darkness and light are separated, seeing cannot possibly have birth and cessation. In that case, didn't we say earlier that darkness, light, seeing, and space are one essence? How could this oneness be established? It's impossible, because the first principle earlier held that seeing and light are one essence, right? if this seeing and light are separated, then this oneness of theirs, because seeing has no birth or cessation. If seeing has no birth or cessation, how could the oneness you speak of be established? It cannot possibly be established. This is one aspect of the analysis. Weren't there 6 aspects of analysis earlier? The first, seeing, light, darkness, and space. If these 3 are one essence with seeing, it's definitely unreasonable. Generally speaking, we probably wouldn't acknowledge that your essence of seeing, together with all light and darkness, all merge into one essence. We probably wouldn't acknowledge this. If this essence of seeing, together with darkness and light, is not one essence, below is the second question. If we acknowledge that the essence of seeing I perceive, together with light and darkness, with darkness and light, is not one essence, seeing is one essence, then light is one essence, and darkness is also one essence. Perhaps space wasn't mentioned, but space is also one essence. In that case, it would be like 3 people, or like a pillar, a vase, and woolen fabric. These 3 phenomena with different separate essences. If it's like this, then that is, if you separate from light and darkness and also from space, then analyze what form or characteristic does the essence of seeing have. He says, with this view of yours, if you separate from light, separate from darkness, separate from space, then analyze your seeing again. Originally, what kind of characteristic does it have? Because generally speaking, so-called seeing, apart from perhaps the mind-only school and certain individual schools that only acknowledge an inner luminosity, a kind of luminous nature, a luminous nature that doesn't involve external objects, a permanently unchanging luminous nature. But aside from this, generally speaking, any of our seeing has a certain relationship with objects, especially conventional seeing. These conventional seeings, for example, are visual seeing. You either see space or you see, of course, as for seeing space, the Shurangama Sutra often uses the conventional expression of seeing space. But in other sutras, including texts like the Prajnaparamita Sanchayagatha, seeing space is generally not acknowledged. Everyone knows this. But here, if you say space, light, and darkness, if these 3 are separated, if these 3 don't exist, if we separate from these 3 objects, then what exactly is your so-called seeing? Non-Buddhists sometimes don't involve any objects at all, like a crystal ball, a consciousness that is self-luminous and self-knowing. Including our mind-only school, sometimes there's a bit of this too, but this is a special view. Generally speaking, without light, darkness, and space, how could there be a separate characteristic of seeing? There probably isn't. Indeed, the characteristic of our seeing still has a certain relationship with external objects. When teaching the Abhisamaya and the Abhidharmakosha, we often speak of our object of apprehension. Whatever the characteristic of the object of apprehension is, then our consciousness also has a similar characteristic. A similar characteristic can arise. For example, if our object of apprehension is white, then my consciousness also has this white characteristic, this discriminating characteristic. If my object is luminous, my consciousness also carries the characteristic of luminosity, and so on. We can analyze it this way. So generally speaking, after you separate from these objects, where would there still be a characteristic? Where would there be a characteristic of seeing? Separated from light, separated from darkness, and separated from space, the essence of seeing would be the same as turtle fur or rabbit horns. He says, you haven't seen light, haven't seen darkness, haven't seen space, then such a seeing would be exactly the same as turtle fur or rabbit horns. Indeed, the other party also thinks this way. Separated from these 3 objects, such a separate essence type of seeing would be like turtle fur or rabbit horns. In the mind-only school, isn't there something called false aspectarian mind-only, then true aspectarian mind-only, and also non-aspectarian mind-only? Last year, when we taught Entering the Way of the Great Vehicle, in Entering the Way of the Great Vehicle, there was also what's called mind-only, non-aspectarian mind-only, right? Here it also says, if there's a seeing without any objects, then it's like turtle fur or rabbit horns. Of course, this is a method of refutation. Actually, when we yogis truly recognize our own awareness, without any external objects, there is also a self-luminous, self-knowing, luminous awareness, free from all conceptual elaboration. This kind of awareness is different from this. That is an inconceivable transcendence of all conceptual discrimination. Light, darkness, and space, these three things are all distinct. So if light and darkness and space, these three things are all separate essences, are all separated, then from what would you establish seeing? Generally, from the perspective of conventional valid cognition, when we speak of the essence of seeing. If there are no objects and only the essence of seeing, this presents certain difficulties. How would this be established? There's no way to establish it. This was just now the second, the refutation of non-one essence. Then the third and fourth, these two are refuted together below. Light and darkness are mutually contradictory. How could they be the same? Because light and darkness are contradictory, everyone knows they mutually exclude each other. They're contradictory. In that case, how could our essence of seeing be the same as them? Speaking in terms of objects, light and darkness cannot both be the same. They are contradictory things. If they're contradictory, they're not the same. When studying Buddhist logic, everyone knows this. If these two are contradictory, then how could we say they're the same? Of course, regarding sameness, light and darkness cannot be the same. If light and darkness cannot be the same, then this essence of seeing that apprehends light and apprehends darkness also cannot be the same. This sameness doesn't exist. Separated from the three, there is nothing. How could there be difference? You see, just now it was same and not same, different and not different. But here, same and different are refuted together. So separated from these three just mentioned, that is, whether space, light, or darkness, if separated from these three, they originally don't exist, then how could there be difference? If there were difference, we'd say, oh, this is space, this is light, this is darkness. These three would be like vase, pillar, and woolen fabric. But if there is no light, no darkness, nothing like that, then how could there be separate essence? How could there be difference? Or how could there be? Because if this doesn't exist, actually we previously had no way to establish it. All three have no way to be established. If these three have no way to be established, it's equivalent to already being separated from these three. If separated from these three, these originally all don't exist. If they originally don't exist, then how could the essence of seeing establish them? These three just now, the manner of one essence also doesn't exist, and then the manner of separate essence. This manner of one essence and different essence, if there's no way to establish the essence of seeing, then how could there be one essence seeing? It's impossible. Below are not same and not different, these two. Weren't there 6 approaches to refutation just now? First is discussing not same. Just now, same and not same were together, but now it's not like that. Not same and not different are refuted together like this. Dividing space and dividing seeing, originally there's no boundary. How are they not the same? Not same is refuted like this. Originally, if there were a divided space and a divided seeing, we could say they're not the same. But divided space and divided seeing originally all have no boundaries. For example, regarding our space here, space there, if space had an essence, like drawing a line, space here, space there would be possible. As for seeing, it's also seeing here, seeing there. If it had an essence, we could divide it, draw a boundary. But whether it's space or seeing, both originally have no boundary, no edge. Then how can we say they're not the same? If they're not the same, there should be something that is the same. In relation to the same, oh, this is not the same as that. This can be said. But with yours, whether speaking from the aspect of space or the aspect of seeing, actually no boundary can be found. If no boundary can be found, then how do you find that these two are not the same? If we have 2 people who are the same, these two are very similar. Then regarding a third person, oh, this person is not similar to that person. But if these 2 people can't be established, then how is the third difference established? Because similarity and dissimilarity require at least 2 things. But if regarding both seeing and space, neither can be found, then how could there be same and not same? Because same and not same must have 2 or more objects before we can say similar or not similar. One person, for example, a Khenpo, is similar to himself. There's no such way of speaking. One thing is similar to one, there's no such way of speaking. So if it has no essence, one can't be established. How can two be established? If two can't be established, where is the concept of not same? This is not same. Then below we discuss not different. Seeing darkness and seeing light, the nature doesn't change. How are they not different? He says, seeing darkness and seeing light do change. Sometimes seeing light, sometimes seeing darkness, they do change. But the nature of seeing darkness and seeing light doesn't change. Seeing darkness and seeing light do have variation, but the seeing nature of these two doesn't undergo transformation. In that case, how can we say they're not different? In Tibetan, it seems like shite, tate. How are they not different? How are they different? This not different, that character not. In Tibetan, I don't know if they translated it incorrectly or if the ultimate intent is like this, but it seems one character is a bit missing one character perhaps. Perhaps what the Chinese says is correct, because earlier it was different and not different, same and not same. All the others have been completely refuted. So here, this not different, if it's different, there's separate essence, there's distinction. And if it's not different, there's no distinction, no difference. This meaning. In that case, if seeing and light are impermanent but the nature doesn't change, then how is there difference? Actually, within the seeing nature there's no change, although there is. His meaning may be, there is seeing light and seeing darkness, but its nature doesn't change. If the nature doesn't change, then how is there difference? The meaning of no difference. In that case, our so-called seeing is refuted through this method. The Buddha told Ananda, you should examine this more minutely, examine it in minute detail, scrutinize and observe carefully. In Tibetan, the meaning is, you should observe well, observe earnestly, observe in detail. The meaning is, because this is extremely important, the Buddha told Ananda, you must not be careless or negligent. You must use extremely refined and subtle wisdom to deeply observe, to meticulously research and judge. Only in this way will you know the principle within. Here, this should be quite important. So with Ananda, important matters are said repeatedly. Perhaps in the translation it's one, in our Buddhist scriptures we often have listen carefully, contemplate well, excellent, excellent, the same words. Perhaps when they translated at that time in order to appear not repetitive, perhaps in Sanskrit it was one word's meaning, language that emphasizes repeatedly, but in order for the words to be perfect or not repetitive, perhaps they use different words to express it. So how is it analyzed below? You should know that light emerges from the sun, and as for darkness, it follows the dark moon. When there's no moon, there's no light. Just as it's explained in the Bodhisattva Karyavatara, darkness appears at that time. Pervasive through space, this means pervading, openness and obstruction. We've been discussing openness and obstruction all along. Now, openness actually belongs to space, arising without any obstruction. Obstruction returns to the great earth. Obstruction refers to what we've been calling obstruction, hindrance. This returns to the great earth, the obstruction of the earth element. These four should fundamentally be like this: light, darkness, openness, and obstruction. Thus, this essence of seeing, from what does it arise? If this is the case, then from where does your essence of seeing arise? It's analyzed this way. Actually, to speak truthfully, our essence of seeing arises in dependence on external objects, but external objects also have no substantial entity. How could it arise? Visual awareness is void and inert, neither united nor separate. The essence of seeing should not arise from nothing. Below, because through the above reasoning, actually your visual awareness is void and inert. Void and inert seems to mean that visual awareness ultimately has nothing. Its essence is empty. Does inert mean cessation? In Tibetan, it seems like annihilation. It also has this meaning. Visual awareness is empty. The essence of visual awareness is empty. Perhaps seeing and awareness may be is visual awareness together with void and inert referring to space? Is this the meaning? Because sometimes before they take things that cannot possibly combine and join them together, this is called neither united nor separate. Here too, your essence of seeing, along with space, light, and darkness, these also cannot be established now. In that case, they cannot possibly arise from conditions. Neither united nor separate, they don't arise from union, and your essence of seeing should not arise from nothing, arising from no cause. So before, this refutes arising from conditions, and afterward it refutes natural arising. Therefore, our essence of seeing does not arise from conditions and does not arise naturally. In that case, its essence can only be acknowledged as inconceivable. If seeing, hearing, and knowing, their nature is perfectly pervasive throughout and fundamentally unshakable. Indeed, as for seeing, hearing, and knowing, their nature is perfect and pervasive throughout the Dharma realm, and they have never been shaken. So when we speak of the so-called matrix of the thus come one, sometimes the matrix of the thus come one exists not only in the mind streams of us sentient beings. Didn't we analyze the day before yesterday that earth, water, fire, and wind, all of these are taught in conjunction with the matrix of the thus come one? And our essence of seeing need not even be mentioned. Our sentient beings seeing, hearing, and knowing also exist within the originally perfect Dharma realm, having never been shaken. In terms of essence, they are unshakable. In terms of appearance, they may possibly be shaken. Sometimes you see light, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you see darkness, sometimes you don't. You should know that boundless, unshakable space. You should know Ananda. You should know that which is boundless and unshakable is space, together with the moving, the previously discussed earth, water, fire, and wind, are all called the 6 primary elements. Previously, we had unshakable space and moving earth, water, fire, and wind. Altogether, there are the 5 primary elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and space. Now our seeing, hearing, and knowing are also unshakable. In that case, unshakable seeing, hearing, and knowing, and the primary element of awareness. The primary element of awareness and the primary element of space are both unshakable. The nature of seeing is unshakable. Space is also unshakable. And in appearance they are shaken, but actually unshakable. There are also earth, water, fire, and wind. As for these 6 primary elements, their nature is truly harmonious. Within the matrix of the thus come one, they are originally unborn and unceasing. I feel the Shurangama Sutra is still taught very profoundly. Indeed, whether earth, water, fire, and wind, the primary element of space, or the previously mentioned space, or today's primary element of awareness, within our matrix of the thus come one, they are always unshakable and also unborn and unceasing. In terms of nature, this is so. The wish-fulfilling treasury also discusses this, and it's also taught in Finding Comfort and Ease in the Nature of Mind. When omniscient Longchenpa taught about the matrix of the thus come one, he spoke of the original alaya, teaching the original face of the matrix of the thus come one. At that time, it's not only in the mind streams of us sentient beings, actually both the vessel world and the world of sentient beings, their essence is the matrix of the thus come one, because after the alaya ripens, it then becomes the vessel and sentient worlds. This may be taught even more profoundly. This is the matrix of the thus come one. Ananda, your nature is sunken and submerged, not awakening to the fact that your seeing, hearing, and knowing are fundamentally the matrix of the thus come one. Now the Buddha again, actually below, Ananda is about to awaken very soon. So now when he's about to awaken, the obstacles become somewhat greater. You see, he says to Ananda, you yourself are sunken and submerged, still unable to awaken. Your own seeing, hearing, and knowing are actually the nature of the matrix of the thus come one. You should contemplate this seeing, hearing, and knowing. Actually, this was a direct pointing instruction from the Buddha to Ananda at that time, and we should also think this way toward ourselves. Using the Buddha's words to directly point to us, we are not Ananda, But we can also become Ananda and listen, because our seeing, hearing, and knowing are originally the nature of the matrix of the Thus Come One. We really don't know this very well. We think the matrix of the Thus Come One is some other kind of profound thing, but actually our current seeing, hearing, and knowing are all the essence of the matrix of the Thus Come One, its miraculous function. You should contemplate seeing, hearing, and knowing. We too should contemplate seeing, hearing, and knowing. Previously, we contemplated earth, water, fire, and wind. Now we contemplate our own, what we see, what we hear, what we think, including all the objects before our six sense faculties. As for this seeing, hearing, and knowing, are they born or ceased? Are they the same or different? Are they neither born nor ceased? Are they neither the same nor different? You should contemplate this way. For example, the discriminating thoughts I generate, these sounds I hear, are they born or ceased? Are they the same or different? Or are they neither born nor ceased? Or are they neither the same nor different? You can contemplate this yourself. Masters like Wenling Jihuan and Master Uyi all felt that all of our current seeing, hearing, and knowing, including birth and cessation, including sameness and difference, all of these are conceptual elaborations. Actually, if we're free from all conceptual elaborations, we can realize within the nature of the matrix of the Thus Come One. We can realize the nature of the matrix of the Thus Come One. This is the meaning. So here, actually, we ourselves can also contemplate what I'm thinking now, what I'm hearing now, what I'm smelling now, what I'm sensing, and also what I'm touching. As for these things, are they ultimately born or ceased, or neither born nor ceased? Are they the same as others or not the same? Different essence or one essence? We can contemplate this ourselves. In Dzogchen too, we are constantly asked to contemplate where our mind is, what the mind is ultimately like. The other day, we were called out many times. With so many times, if we don't turn inward at all, perhaps we might truly be beyond hope. Because with such excellent Dharma, such an excellent teacher, having already made the direct pointing instruction, there's no other way. You see, now the Buddha personally asks us, what is your own seeing, hearing, and knowing ultimately like? We also speak of the mind's birth and cessation. What is the mind ultimately like? Actually, in the end, it's also like this. What is our seeing, hearing, and knowing ultimately like? Is there truly birth and cessation? Or is there no birth and cessation? Does it ultimately have color or shape? What is it ultimately like? When our own mind turns inward to examine itself, perhaps some sharp-facultied people at this time will say, oh, as for our so-called clearly evident discriminating thoughts, these discriminating thoughts don't abide even for an instant, so their essence is originally like this. There is nothing but luminosity and emptiness inseparable, but even this cannot be described in words. Perhaps some people should be quite aware at this moment. Then the Buddha said, you have never known that within the matrix of the Thus Come One, the nature of seeing is luminous awareness. The luminous essence is bright seeing, pure and natural, pervading the Dharma realm. Then the Buddha told Ananda, you have never truly known at all that these are all within the matrix of the Thus Come One. Actually, the nature of seeing is luminous awareness. The nature of seeing should be the essence, our seeing nature. This is seeing, hearing, and knowing. This seeing, hearing, and knowing is actually bright seeing, also recognizing mind and seeing nature. If we recognize mind and see nature, actually all the present seeing, hearing, and knowing need not be changed. When we taught the flight of Garuda and the treasury of Dharmadhatu, although I myself have not realized by relying on the blessings of omniscient Longchenpa and these great masters, it seems many of us truly know the full story of the mind. Actually, here it's also like this. He asks Ananda, you previously never knew at all that this seeing, hearing, and knowing is actually a miraculous function of the matrix of the Thus Come One. Its nature is free from all conceptual elaborations, pure and natural, but it truly pervades the entire Dharma realm. Precisely because this is so, every one of us sentient beings possesses the marks of the matrix of the Thus Come One, and also each person can awaken. We have this resource, we have this opportunity. If we didn't didn't have this luminous, natural, pure Dharma, perhaps some people would be able to realize it would be their own exclusive patent, while some people could never possibly realize. But it's not like this. Actually, in the mind stream of every sentient being, even down to ants and earthworms and above, all have Buddha nature. This Buddha nature, once conditions ripen, can be realized. The reason is just this. Following sentient beings' minds according to the measure of what they know, however, this also follows sentient beings' minds. The measure of what they know is indeed not the same. For example, as for the Buddha, he can actually see the pure lands of the 10 directions completely and without obstruction. As for bodhisattvas, just as taught in the Madhyamakavatara and the Dashabhumika Sutra, they see hundreds of thousands of myriads of worlds. There are also such cases. As for Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, for example, Venerable Aniruddha, he can see the entire Jambudvapa like an Amalaka fruit in the palm of his hand. He only sees all of this entire Jambudvapa, and also Venerable Ananda, because he has the first dhyana, he has certain states of the first dhyana. As for us ordinary sentient beings, we have mouse-like short sight. We only see a tiny bit, just a little bit. Perhaps we use discriminating thought to see a little, or we use reasoning to see a little. Actually, what we see is extremely narrow. This should be clear. So following the differences in sentient beings' minds, for this reason, the measure of what they know is also different. Like one faculty of seeing pervades the Dharma realm. Actually, with our one faculty of seeing, whether what the eye faculty sees, what the nose faculty sees, what the ear faculty sees, this awareness, actually this seeing pervades the entire Dharma realm. What's taught below is hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, awareness through touch, awareness through knowing, wonderfully excellent, luminous and clear, pervading throughout the Dharma realm. If we analyze in detail, for example, the sounds we hear, the hearing of the ears, then the nose's sense of smell, the tongue's sense of taste and touch, then the body's tactile awareness, and the mind's awareness and knowing, they should correspond this way: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These, the awareness obtained by each one, are actually wonderfully excellent and clear. Their luminosity and merit are clear and unobstructed, without any obstruction. They pervade the Dharma realm. We might think, wow, it really stinks in this toilet, but actually its luminosity is also within the matrix of the Thus Come One, and it is still no different from a pure Buddha land. It's just that before us sentient beings, this appears so foul-smelling, so unpleasant to smell, or unpleasant to hear, or unpleasant to experience. Just now we spoke of pervading the Dharma realm. Perfecting the 10 directions of space, how could there be location? Perfecting the space of the 10 directions, how could there be a fixed or separated location? Actually, there isn't. Throughout all worlds, this resource of our seeing, hearing, and knowing indeed exists. Following karma, it manifests. Following one's own karma, one sees what can be manifested. We people sitting here also have some connection. I especially think this way, having received such an empowerment, and then gradually, even if many cannot achieve that in this lifetime, as long as we don't break our samaya, we always confess well and keep waiting until death. This too is meaningful. Truly, human life is still very meaningful. This point is unshakable. If we ourselves continue to confess well and practice well, then in this lifetime to truly encounter such a profound Dharma is still extremely meaningful. Worldly people in ignorance are confused about causes and conditions and natural existence. Because worldly people are ignorant, they are confused about these phenomena, including our seeing, hearing, and knowing, thinking they arise from causes and conditions or arise naturally. These are all discriminations and conjectures of the conscious mind. These are conjectures of the discriminating conscious mind. Whatever has verbal expression has no true meaning. Just as before, as long as you have any kind of verbal expression, as long as you open your mouth, you should rinse your mouth for 3 days. So as long as one speaks, then it's not true anymore. There is no true ultimate meaning. Up to here, we've discussed the primary element of awareness. The primary element of awareness actually encompasses seeing, hearing, and knowing. Here they are all included within seeing. Our seeing and the Dharmata matrix of the Thus Come One still have this inseparable relationship. It's just that sentient beings, depending on their own faculties, can know how much. Actually, we educated people are also like this. Some have elementary school level, some have middle school level, some have university level. But although some have these levels within them, their wisdom, compassion, and many aspects, some have relatively high standards, some are relatively low. There are also all different kinds. This has a certain relationship with our mind and the measure of what we know. There is a certain relationship. The Shurangama Sutra taught up to here.
Bandharangara Padmasada Bandharangara Padmasada